Productions. Praxis Pedagogy exists to position our teaching and learning practice within different methodologies. We want to construct a guild of educators dedicated to designing a difference in our own teaching and learning and in our students' experience. Hey everybody, welcome back to Praxis Pedagogy Podcast, episode 77. Really glad you took the opportunity to tune in and listen to this episode today. Today we have Jenn Wicks. She is the Director of Teaching and Learning Innovation at College of North Atlantic in Newfoundland and Labrador and has worked in higher education for over 20 years. She holds a professional coach certification from the IFC and graduated from the Certificate in Executive Coaching program at Royal Roads University. Jenn is also an appreciative inquiry facilitator and a member of the Authentic Leadership Global TM community. She's passionate about safe streets, and that comes up in this episode right near the end, so you want to listen to that, and serves as Director of Women's Cycling and on the Executive Board of Bicycle Newfoundland and Labrador. This is a great episode. We cover a whole gamut of different topics and interests. We'll catch you on the other side. That voice always throws me for a loop. All right, here we go. 3, 2, 1. Hey, everybody. Welcome back to Praxis Pedagogy Podcast. So glad you've taken the time to tune in and listen to us today. We have a special returning guest. Jennifer, this must be third for you now. Third time back?
Yes. Third time's a charm.
Well, every one of them's been a charm. It's been awesome to have you here, everyone. This is Jenn Wicks. You are from the awesome province of Newfoundland. And so
Labrador. And Labrador.
Oh, right. I can't forget that. I'll have to edit that back. So you are from the amazing province of Newfoundland and Labrador. And so tell us, for those of you who don't know Jenn, she's an avid cyclist, and she just got off a 140K ride, which is amazing. And Jenn, how about you fill us in a little bit on your background and what you're doing?
Sure. Thanks. And I'm really glad to be here again, having another good chat with you, Tim. So I'm Jenn Wicks, and I'm the Director of Teaching and Learning Innovation at College of the North Atlantic in Newfoundland and Labrador. I'm based just outside St. John's. And basically I'm the Teaching and Learning Center here. And so most of you will recognize that, faculty development role. And I've got lots of people helping me out, supporting me to make sure that we reach all the faculty that we can, offering professional development and learning opportunities. Getting through this COVID period has been quite a challenge, but I've been able to connect with a lot of people and hear a lot of stories about how people are getting through all this. So that's basically who I am. And I don't know if that's good.
That's awesome. Jenn, how's the province doing with COVID?
So we've had some, minimal numbers cropping up again just lately, but in general, I think we've fared quite well, and things have, we've gone down to a level now where in many places masks are optional, although I do notice a lot of people still wearing masks, and some businesses are still requiring masks. But it's, in some ways it feels more normal than it has. And, kids are back to school, all those things. So it's, and on campus, we've modified our delivery. So we do have some people back on campus, and some programs have gone online. So it's been an interesting year and a half.
Yeah, no kidding. And for those of you who are listening outside of Canada, we have a federal election coming up by the time this recording gets released, the federal election will have already passed, and maybe there'll be a change. How has the process of the election been affecting Newfoundland?
There's a lot of discussion about that. And interestingly, there's also a municipal election coming up. So so there's just signs everywhere and a lot of campaigning, trying to, keep your eye on both elections. There's a lot of information coming at us right now. But I don't know how it's going to turn out for us this time around.
Is there a feeling in Newfoundland, kind of like there is a feeling in BC, that, we're because we're on the coasts and we're not in the epicenter of the country, we're like our provinces aren't Quebec or Ontario. Is there a feeling in the province a little bit of, it doesn't really matter what we do?
That's a great question. I don't know. Personally, I have always kind of had that sense that when people talk about politics here, that, they're all the same kind of thing. So I don't know. I can't really speak for everyone, obviously, but there does seem to be there does seem to be that sentiment going around. Yes.
Yeah. I've always felt that in BC. Like I'm an avid advocate for voting. Like, get out there and vote. There's too many people have sacrificed a lot, including the ultimate sacrifice, to give us the ability to have these kinds of activities in our country. And I take them very seriously. And so do your homework, people. Get out there and get your vote in, because it counts. But, oftentimes when it gets around to BC, it's like, well, the rest of the country's pretty much voted already. And we know which way it's going to go, unless it's super tight, which I don't think it's been for a while. But anyway, I just, I kind of feel like, what's the point? Right. And it's like, anyway, good. Enough politics. I'm done with politics for the last 2 years. It's just been stupid, but, good to have you on the show, Jen. You're an executive coach as well as working with the Center of Innovation and Learning. And so that's why I wanted to bring you back to do my little quarterly coaching session. I'm just kidding. No, we don't need to do that. But what's been in the forefront of everyone's mind out there, especially these last 6 months, as you're coming out of summer and looking at coming into fall? I know here in the province, a lot of places are going back face to face, and there's some turmoil. There's some uneasiness about that. What's it like out there?
I really feel like people are just kind of getting on with it. The people who are back on campus are quite excited about it for the most part. Ready to get back face to face and see their students and, be in their shops and their labs and their classrooms. Again, it's hard to say, and we're just starting up right now, but I've been really focused on greeting and welcoming all the new faculty that we have on board at the college, just getting our offerings ready for people and, making the booking schedule and all those kind of logistics for professional learning throughout the year. So it's quite exciting. We've decided to go with a theme this year of universal design for learning. Yes. So a lot of the teaching and learning workshops will be including UDL, and I'm planning to do a book club in January on the book Reach Everyone, Teach Everyone. And I got that idea from Jennifer Connolly at Holland College. So I have to give a shout out to her. And they actually did the book club at Holland College, and they had Thomas Tobin, one of the authors, come and speak to them on Zoom for an hour at the end of their book club. Yeah. So, fingers crossed, we might get a little extra bonus after we do we might get a visit. That would be wonderful. But yeah, so that's one of the things on the horizon, but super excited about the UDL theme.
That is cool. So how did you come up with the theme? Do you have a team of people looking at that?
No. So how it came up was I had the conversation with Jennifer at Holland College last year. She shared with me a lot of the resources and told me, how it went and that they had chosen it as a theme. And the more I looked at the research, the more I looked at what was coming out about, this just kind of the future of teaching and learning, universal design, not just in education, but elsewhere, everywhere throughout our communities, it really, there's a really big impetus for and need for universal design. And, I do a lot of advocacy around safe streets and cycling infrastructure. And that's, it's an architectural reference, and it runs through everything that we do and everything that we touch. So we need to be considering how we design everything for more of the people, rather than waiting for people to request accommodations or ask for things. We need to be really thinking ahead here. So so she brought it up, and then the more I looked at, and I'm working on this framework for teaching and learning for the whole college, which is going to outline just basically some expectations, some competencies that people can choose for themselves where they want to go. It'll be kind of a design your own learning plan kind of thing for faculty. And so as a part of that as well, universal design, I put it in there as a component, but then it actually touches every aspect, every competency of the framework. So it just seems like a natural fit to try to set this out as a theme, set our intentions, get people just well-versed in what it is and understanding the concept. And then again, letting people choose, like, where do I see myself in this? How do I think this would benefit my students in my subject matter? And what's one thing I can do?
That's very cool. Pardon me. I like that last question. What is there that I can do? Is that the framework that you just laid out for us, Sarah? Is that the framework of your UDL program?
Well, the framework is around competencies. So there's kind of 5 main areas, which is professional engagement, teaching and learning, assessing for learning, learner engagement, and digital fluency and innovation. So kind of the standard areas that would, I guess, make a well-rounded teacher. And I think there's something in it for everyone in terms of, if you're a career teacher and you've been doing it forever, you can find some things in there like, oh, hey, I've been wanting to do this, or I think this would solve a problem, right? To the person who is just coming on board, doesn't have any teaching background, and can also see, oh, okay, here's some things. And I can, create a learning plan for myself that makes sense for me, over the next 6 months or over the next year. Here's what I'm going to focus on.
That's very cool. If I'm understanding you correctly, so the intent of this is to have a framework in place for new people coming into the university college who have a passion for their expertise, but may not be adverse in teaching very well. I'm saying that incorrectly. Who may not have much experience in teaching. But also you're bringing a depth of and a breadth of perspective to the role of teaching, right?
Yeah, it gives people some things to aspire to, no matter where we are in our career. No matter how much you learn, there's always something else. And it's not to be overwhelming. It's just to say, you don't have to do all of these things, but what excites you about this framework? It's not a check off all the boxes thing. It's not do a session in all of these things through the year. It's nothing like that. It's like, what do I want to focus on? And, okay, here's a kind of template of things that I might, structure my plan around, or see what's possible. Right.
So what excites you the most about UDL as you're getting into the research and digging through this and building this from the grass up?
Oh, that's a great question. I think probably back when I heard of UDL first, it seemed like a very overwhelming construct, in the sense that, I'm going to have to redesign everything. Or if I'm, teaching a class, it's all about choice. And so that means I have to have, a million different assignments created. Like, there's no way I'm going to be able to mark all that stuff. It feels like a very overwhelming concept at first. And that's why I think this book is really good. I haven't finished it yet, but I'm getting through it now, and it is so good. It's very practical. And one of the things they talk about is this +1 methodology. And so that's that piece of just saying, what's one thing I can try? What's one thing I can do differently? Is it captioning my, PowerPoints or doing a voiceover for my slides? Is it giving my students a choice in how they demonstrate a skill? So it's like, what's one thing I can do, and then see how that goes. So no pressure, just one little thing, and kind of taking the momentum from that and building confidence around, oh, okay, so now I'm meeting more needs of more people. Mm-hmm. And so what else can I do now?
Right. I'll provide a link to the book in the show notes. And so people who are listening, you can click that link and off you go. And that's great. So what are you doing differently now, Jenn, as you are digging into this and applying what you're learning?
For me, for my offerings, well, one of the things is we're adding a universal design theme. So that means some of our offerings are going to be explicitly about UDL, like what is it, introducing it to the college. I'm sure some people will know more about it than I do. So we'll all be learning together. We also have some amazing resources at the college, like library services, accessibility services. We have our counseling services. So all of those talents that we have, and also our instructional designers and people in our distributed learning service. A lot of people have a lot of different expertise in this. So it's bringing those people together and asking for support. I'm working right now with Stephanie Cashin, who's from our accessibility services. And she did a presentation at our connected learning workshop in May about universal design for learning. And so we're kind of just building on that, seeing, where can we start with getting people some exposure to UDL.
How's that going? How's the exposure going?
Our first one is coming up. I think the first week of October is going to be our first focused session on UDL, but also I'm trying to just build it in for myself. I'm trying to do the +1 method. So trying to build in more choice, more options, more flexibility in my offerings. I have done some stuff in the past where, for example, I didn't really want to record it, because it was like live and I want people to feel safe in this space, like maybe they're new faculty. And so if I recorded it, they wouldn't want to share as much. So I think that's a valid, concern. But thinking about this UDL approach, I'm just trying to find different ways to be considerate of everyone, including people who, can't make the live session, making materials available in different ways online. And so just trying to set up sessions like that. And then also including bits and pieces of UDL in our other offerings. So maybe we're offering a session about authentic assessment, and it's not specifically hitting UDL on the head, but we will be either modeling a UDL methodology or, following the guidelines, or we might highlight some of the things about UDL in those sessions. So there's lots of opportunities to be able to include it.
That sounds very cool. If you need any help, let me know.
Oh yeah. I'm going to hold you to that.
Yeah. I fell in love with UDL a long time ago, and I was on a project with a colleague of mine when I was back at PCIT, and we did UDL for math. And when we were finished the product, we've soon discovered that it was a whole new delivery system. Like math had been traditionally, do this problem and repeat times 10 with different numbers and maybe different names, right? And soon people get tired of that. And so we started rolling in narrative and making it almost, silly. But just using everyday math and using UDL principles. And it was not only an interesting experience, but it transformed a lot of the things that I've done after that. Like even something simple as PowerPoints. Like I'm very aware now of background and motion in background and color scheme in slides. And Yeah, and always the death by PowerPoint principles of, not having too much print and all that other stuff. And, but even the picture being on the correct side of the screen and where the writing is. And yeah, so it's made a huge impact on, just like you said, like one little thing that I do that I love doing. I love presenting. I love facilitating, and it's transformed what I do. And now it's almost second nature, where I just build that in to the point where I've had people comment like, well, how did you do that? And that's an interesting way of having that background. Like, why are you doing all that? And so I found that it's brought up a natural conversation about UDL, and I am by no means an expert on UDL, right? So I'm going to be picking up this book and reading it. And we have a colleague at BC campus, Carolee, who is, she's just done her PhD in UDL design. And
wow.
And so whenever we have her involved in conversations, she always asks these really great questions.
Yeah.
Right now, or she's very subtle and gentle. And she's like, well, don't forget about this.
Right.
And I'm like, oh yeah, that's right. Right. Because it's amazing. So I'm really excited to see what you're going to put together here. Because again, like building something from the ground up, that really excites me. Right. That really excites
and I'd
me.
love to know more about your math project with UDL. I think that's a really cool aspect, and probably something that I haven't even really thought about at all. How do you do math with a UDL focus? So yeah, maybe you could do a podcast about
Well, I know that my colleague had partnered with another colleague of mine. I'll just mention their names, Mark Overgaard and Chad Flynn. So shout out to Mark Overgaard and Chad Flynn for putting together a series now. They call it Math for Trades. And they've done volume 1, volume 2. And by the time people hear this, they'll be on volume 3. And they have taken the whole teaching of math and trades and flipped it on its head. So they've done not only the traditional textbook, we'll call it the workbook, but they've done video, they've done audio recording, they've done short video to like little explainer videos. They've done narrative videos to just conversationally walk through concepts. And I'm getting tons of great feedback. So I'll make sure that you get links to that in not only in the show notes, but Jen will send it to you and you can use that. And then there was another one that we worked on that Mark did it before he and I worked on the math one, where he did soldering. And yeah, so I'll get that to you somehow. And then, cause I'm sure Mark will be thrilled to know that it's being looked at out in the great expanse of Newfoundland, Labrador.
Oh, that's great. Yeah. Thank you.
You're welcome. You're welcome. So do you see any parallels between what you're doing with UDL and coaching? Because it almost seems like you're making people aware of things that they weren't aware of.
Well, that's an interesting perspective. Yeah. I think one of just as you're saying that now, because I hadn't really thought about it, is when we approach UDL, especially with adult learners in higher education, and this going back to this idea of choice and flexibility. And we've talked about this before, taking your 100% responsibility. This taking the classroom from a teaching centered, me thing from a teacher's perspective, to a we thing where the students are really thinking about their future. How am I going to use this? Why is this important? And what can I do now? Even if I'm not like so excited and passionate about this thing that I've chosen to study, what are some of the things that I can do to make this maybe easier or more accessible for me? Whereas, it used to be, in many cases where the teacher was saying, this is the way, this is the only way. And that's everything from the instructions to the materials, to the content, to the curriculum, to the assessment, and how things need to be submitted. When those things are very rigid, it's difficult for people to take their 100% responsibility because you're taking more. And when you're taking more, the other person takes less. It's just that kind of a a dance. So I think universal design actually opens up that opportunity to say, we're both here. I'm taking my 100% as your teacher, and here's what I'm going to commit to this year, and getting the students to also look at it, and maybe they don't know in the beginning what's my 100%, but helping them articulate that and to look for opportunities by being somewhat flexible or doing the +1 method, whatever that looks like, and working with your colleagues and saying, hey, what do you got? What have you tried that's working for you? All of those things can bring more partnership or a sense of partnership into the classroom, if that's what you want. Now, not every instructor is going to want to have that kind of a classroom environment. Again, it's a choice, and I'm not going to tell anyone how to run their classroom, but it is something I'm excited about. And we know from coaching that how adults learn, one of the big factors is if they feel like they can choose. If we feel like we can choose something, or there is a choice, we feel a lot more empowered and maybe even happier, to say, I'm going to pick the thing that I want to do, rather than just being told there's only one way.
Right. There's a lot more success in that too, I think, when people pick something that they're already kind of fired up about, or maybe even more curious than fired up, and allowing that curiosity to lead them into that area of excitement and, dare I say, passion. But yeah, very cool. Very cool. How's the coaching going?
The coaching is going well. And actually, I don't know if I shared with you last time. Yeah, I think I did. We had talked about the partnership with Niagara College, the 6-month pilot. It's called Coach Like in the Classroom. And so we're now in the latter stages of that, where we've got 2 workshops left, and we're getting some good feedback. We've kind of assessed ourselves, and we're looking at, how can we do this better next time? I think it was a bit long, the 6-month period, especially between 2 colleges. So we've had some attrition, and, even for us, it's like, okay, maybe we can do this in a bit more of a compact way. And I've been working with Dana Wetherell at Niagara. So she's been an amazing partner to work with, and, we're not done yet, but it was a really exciting project. So thinking about that, how can we do more of the coach-like practice in the classroom? And then how do we bring that to people? Because coaching and instructional coaching typically have been more about observing and giving direct feedback. Have you tried this? It's more of a mentoring thing. So it's actually quite cool to take this from a pure coaching methodology. And, for me, it's the stuff that I've learned from Royal Roads University, which is, we take a very pure coaching approach to learning it. And then, you can build on that when you leave and get creative. But thinking about that pure coaching, how can we take those competencies of being coach-like, because we're not a coach if we're an instructor, we're not really a pure coach, but we can take some of those competencies into the classroom in order to help our students design their own actions, for example, and build in their own accountability, which are really important pieces that I think are often missing in the relationship with an instructor and their students.
So what was one thing that surprised you about your pilot project so far?
Surprise. That's a good question. Honestly, I think it was like between Dana and I, because we are both certified coaches, it's probably for us like how much we've learned, how far we've come. So now when we work with people who are not coaches, we realize how much work it takes to become a coach in the pure sense of coaching. So how do you make this achievable and sustainable and accessible for faculty who've already got all this other stuff going on, and make it, kind of bite-sized pieces so that people can, it goes back to this +1 method. I think what's one thing I can bring into my classroom that will make me a better listener or ask better questions so that my students can, feel empowered and maybe be more successful in their learning.
Yeah, good deal. Good deal. What's one thing that you've learned that you won't do again? I'm trying to couch it around the term of, is there you don't have to go into detail, but is there a mistake that happened that you're like, aha?
That's a great question. And I don't know if Dana will agree with me on this one, but I think what comes to the surface as you ask me that question is trying to take faculty and give them like too much information about the coaching stuff. Maybe if we had, and this is what I'm definitely thinking about offering a shorter, more compact offering of this to really focus on the practical aspects of it. I mean, it's hard to separate the two. And I think that's where we went because that was what we felt was necessary. So the challenge will now be innovating what we've already delivered to bring it to the next level so that we can, again, make it more accessible for people.
Do you find it easier to work with another coach on this? Because you're bringing two people together that have got, training and experience and thoughts and all that other stuff. And I'm sure it worked out really well for the two of you, but, do you find that hard to come together as two coaches with all that background to put together this kind of a project?
Oh, that's a good question. So I just kind of randomly had reached out to the Teaching and Learning Center at Niagara last year, and her supervisor, Natasha, said, "Hey, there's somebody in my office who is interested in coaching and becoming a coach. Maybe I can, set you up for a conversation." We had literally one conversation. She told me about this application she was doing for some funding and asked me if I wanted to be a part of it. And I was like, yes, 100% I want to be a part of that. And then we were just off to the races. And it has been, I think, one of the most successful partnerships that I've ever been a part of. She's just been delightful to work with. And I think we just, we keep each other going and we bring different perspectives. I never felt like it was slowing me down to have a partnership, which sometimes can be the case. I actually felt like I probably was more productive with her support and with the kinds of conversations that we were having. We're both so excited about it. So it's been really nice. Yeah.
That's really good. That's really good. So are you gonna keep working together after this pilot's done?
I hope so. I mean, we've talked about it. So I hope that she's still got time to keep working on this and elevate it to the next level.
That's very cool. Very cool. How's the coaching going at the school when you interact with faculty?
Yeah, so I'm not doing much one-to-one coaching right now outside of that offering, because we do offer one-to-one coaching through that. Usually it takes people a little bit of time to settle in the fall, and then I'll start getting some calls for coaching. But there were a few big aha moments at the end of last semester, which I was really excited about. And I think part of that was we had done that connected learning workshop series, which was a 3-day internal conference, basically a virtual conference, and different faculty had presented and whatnot. And I had done a few sessions. And after that, I had a lot of uptake from faculty saying, "Oh, hey, you had mentioned this thing in your session. Can I set up a time to meet you?" And so being relatively new to the college, that was a great opportunity for, I think, people to get to know me better. And then we were able to have some great conversations. People were actually, wanting to have a second pair of eyes on some things, just have some brainstorming conversations around how they could do things better. And we did have some really good moments where we were like, oh, okay. So, for example, course alignment, something very simple that when you're teaching the course, you're just like head down in it. Everyone, you might have a team of people teaching the same course, so you feel obliged to stick to what's there. And we basically, in one instance, we had looked at this huge slide presentation. And when we looked back to the learning outcomes, there were like 2 learning outcomes for that. And it's like, wow, okay, all right.
2 learning outcomes for 150 slide deck, right? It's like,
So that was brilliant. But it was also like, oh no, like what? So how do you then coordinate everyone? And if somebody has put the work into building that content, it's a relationship piece too. So
right.
Yeah.
I can imagine going and having that conversation going, okay, so Tim, that 150 slide deck that you got going on there, great, but only covers about 1/8 of the content that we really need to cover. So we're going to have to trim this back a little bit, right? Walking on eggshells, because Tim's been there for, 20 plus years, and he's got a lot of influence and pull, and he may not be the quote unquote ticketed leader, but he's the informal leader. And now you got to have a conversation with this person, right?
Yeah. And, it can be quite freeing to say, oh, wow, because people our main commodity is time. So if you're the person who's going around like a chicken with your head cut off every day saying, I don't have enough time, I'm too busy. And then all of a sudden you've got a slide, one whole class basically cut down to 2 slides in a short conversation. Well, now I've got all of this time left over. What can I do with that? And so, that's where we can bring in some of these new innovations and say, how are you engaging your students in having these more coach-like conversations?
That's so cool, because I know early on in my career, I'd get these slide decks from colleagues who were very well versed in the subject matter that they were teaching. And some of the stuff was new to me. So I'd get their slide deck of, no kidding, like 100 slides. And I'd be like, and I'd feel this pressure to get through all of them. Like I had this inside pressure to go, well, this person gave me the slide deck. Surely they must go through every slide themselves in class. So I have to do it too. And then not knowing all the content, I often found myself speeding through slides or spending an exorbitant amount of time trying to find out all the background to all this stuff. And then realizing, oh my goodness, how did they cover all this stuff in that short amount of time? I can imagine that some people will be doing that and going, okay, this is freeing, because if I can cut that 100 deck down to 10, right? And now I can have students emerge the conversation from that slide deck rather than me just driving it through, right?
Yeah, it's just a matter of time. People just say, oh, I just got to get through this, right? And so if you hear yourself saying that, even if it's just internally, oh, I've just got to get through all of this stuff, that should be a little cue for self-reflection to just say, do I have too much stuff? Where did all this stuff come from? Maybe if I look, and this is why it's really important to have those slow conversations at the beginning of the semester where people sit down, you have your cup of coffee or your tea or whatever, take some nice deep breaths and say, what are we trying to achieve here? What's coming up? What's at the end? Where are we going with the assessments? And being able to work backwards from that. And you've done some stuff on backward design, which is quite useful. And so there's a macro level to backward design, just looking at the whole course and what everyone's going to be doing. And then there's the kind of micro level, which is the individual lessons and how you're going to deliver, the actual structure for learning. Mm-hmm. So, one other exciting thing we're doing here is we have developed a new classroom observation process. I don't know if we talked about this last time. I don't think we had started it yet.
Is this like with one-way glass and stuff? Because that wouldn't be intimidating / cool at the same time. Yeah. Very spy-like.
No. So we didn't have classroom observations, and someone reached out to me from School of Health Sciences because they needed this component for some of their accreditation for some programs. And so I've always wanted to do something unique for classroom observations that's like not connected to HR or policy, but it's more of a strengths-based coach approach to classroom observing. So thinking about, how do we do that without a whole staff of coaches, because obviously I'm not going to be able to do, 600 classroom observations a year. We started a pilot. So we did some in June with some of the staff for the faculty from health sciences. And we developed a template for whoever is observing. And basically it is like a coaching conversation. So you sit in on the class, just like a normal classroom observation, but you've only got a few things to look for, like kind of competency based things. Nothing, I want to say like nothing silly. Like, you know how sometimes classroom observations have like, teacher came to class on time or, things like that. Like, it's very like, I don't know what the word is, but we didn't want it to be, we wanted to basically hold people capable as professionals. We're not going to be nitpicking your every little move because we don't think that that's valuable. The most valuable part of an observation is being able to hold up the mirror for people. And especially to say, I noticed that when you did this, all of the students were engaged or all of the students were they all started writing something down when you said that, looking for the things that they're doing well. And, this always comes up in these conversations. People will go, yeah, but what if they're doing it all wrong? Well, nobody's ever doing it all wrong. And if you come into somebody's classroom, that's a very vulnerable place for them to be. So we have to protect that safe space for our faculty. We have to respect them as professionals, no matter where they're coming from or where they're starting. And so getting to put on that, those glasses of, I'm going to look for all the strengths that I see. It is a gift for people. And it's some place where we can start building a relationship. If you don't have that relationship, you're never going to get back to that place again. You're never going to be able to find a way to have more meaningful conversations with people. So it's like, hey, I'm just here today to see what you're doing well and to hold up the mirror. If the person, it's just like any coaching conversation, you say, what would you like to focus on today? Or you would say, is there something that you'd like to do over from today? And then when they talk about that, that can be an opening where you say, is that something you'd like to talk about? If they say yes, that opens the door to having some conversation about that. And what we don't want is for the observer to just give advice. We want a real coaching approach where the observer gets curious about that. So if you say, is there anything you would have liked to do over if you had another chance to do that class? And the instructor says, well, I feel like I talked too much and my students didn't really participate. Like it was like, dead air or whatever, or pulling teeth, if they say something like that. And you say, well, is that something you'd like to talk about more? And they say yes. Then you can ask some more curious questions. And they might say, so you might ask them a curious question like, is this normal? Like, are they normally, is it like pulling teeth? And if they say no or yes, so you basically just be really present and listen and have a coaching style conversation. And you show up as a coach.
Wow. Okay. I think I might need you to fly out to BC.
You've got lots of talented coaches out there that could.
We do. So that's interesting because when you say, when I was talking, I didn't feel like the students were engaging much. I think back to my own teaching practice and my continuing part-time studies practice. It's like, sometimes I misjudge that, right? Where I feel like they're not engaging, they're not talking, they're not asking questions. Therefore, they're not getting it. What am I missing? Am I over their head? Am I wasting time? Or it gets dark after that, right? Like, it just goes to a dark place. And sometimes I'm absolutely wrong. Sometimes they're so engaged and they're in the material and they're just listening and soaking up everything. Right. And I'm just wrong. I'm just absolutely wrong about the engagement piece. Do you find yourself having that kind of conversation with instructors saying you might look at engagement this way? That's not the only way students engage?
It's interesting. I'm thinking back to one conversation in particular, and I think what I asked was something like, what kind of engagement would you like to see? And what's important about that to you?
Oh, well, yeah. And that's a really good one. Why is that important to you? Yeah. Do you find people really wrestling with their value systems when it comes to being a teacher or a faculty?
I think people don't always acknowledge that their values are coming into play. I think people kind of sometimes they have very high expectations for themselves, but they don't acknowledge what those expectations are, where they came from. If the last time you've observed someone teaching was when you were in school, like as a child or as a, high school student or a university student or a college student, then it's been a while for most of us by the time we get into a classroom. And frankly, some people are coming from industry. So the last time they might have seen anything remotely like this is a presentation or a foreman or a boss coming in and giving a speech. So I have seen people who use kind of both ends of the spectrum, like some faculty who are like, oh, I'm a great teacher. I'm doing amazing. They've got like confidence off the scale. And then, you might see their classroom and you can just tell they're a great person. They've got great charisma and the students like them, but it's like an act, it's like a show or something. So it's working in the sense that, they'll probably get good student evaluations. Their students are learning, but there isn't much emphasis on the student. It's more about the instructor. Again, that's a choice, and that's somebody's personality might also influence that. But when you see a really good class, or even just a really good conversation between a teacher and a student, it's about the student. It's not just I care about the students, because I think everyone cares about their students and how they do. I would like to think so. It's not only that, it's also how am I showing up in a way that helps the student articulate what they need, what they want, what's good for them, which not every student is going to know yet. So it's really paying attention and tuning in to how can I get my student thinking about themselves in this way and their learning.
Wow. Okay. So does that connect into the vulnerability piece for faculty and being able to go there?
Yeah. Yeah. And the students.
And so, and that's I'm just trying to piece this stuff together. So that also would speak to a level of trust that gets built between faculty and student.
Yeah.
That may also include the breaking down of the silo and the barrier of I'm up here in the front, you're down there sitting in the seat.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And people do that in different ways. How you speak to the students, how you set out the kind of classroom rules or expectations at the beginning. Do you do it collaboratively? Do the students write it up? Do you type it? It's it starts from that very beginning. And, what are you expecting of them in terms of rules and phone usage? Like things like that can really impact how a student thinks about you as their instructor and how you're positioning yourself. So yeah, it is vulnerable. And particularly when, we have these beliefs about how I should be in front of the class, if you let them get away with that, they'll walk all over you, those kinds of things. I definitely started out like that as an instructor. And there is some element of, we do have to have clear boundaries and we do have to have expectations. But, again, it's this +1 thing. Is that your +1 this year? Having a conversation with your students about how things are going. Are you comfortable in this classroom? Do you feel safe? Do you feel like the rules meet your needs? Is there anything you'd like to change? Since we've already started, what have you noticed that's kind of annoying or maybe makes you think twice about coming to class?
Those are some pretty significant questions, because I'm just putting myself in the role play, right? And I'm picturing myself in my classroom teaching my course. And it's interesting because I have the opportunity to teach the same course. This is in the School of Business and Media. I have the same opportunity I have the opportunity to teach the same course to first year, like level 1, and level 5. So we would call that advanced diploma. And the difference is, I'm teaching to young adults, 18, 19, 20, first year into college, university, as opposed to professionals who are in the field of expertise that they're in, and they're looking at moving up the ladder, so to speak, or they're looking at expanding their knowledge in certain organizational behavior concepts. And I do notice a huge difference in engagement style and maturity level. And so when you're asking those questions, I'm putting myself in that space going, what would it look like if I began asking those questions out loud? And am I open enough, willing enough to not only listen to the answers, but begin implementing some of those answers? Mm-hmm. Do you find that faculty may have the bandwidth to listen, but putting it into practice is a whole other gear?
That's a good question. I mean, I love hearing your perspective as faculty. I've done a number, probably hundreds of small group instructional feedback sessions. So going into a classroom, asking the questions that I've helped the instructor come up with in advance, and they leave the classroom, and I would go in and have a conversation with their students. And then I would basically go through all of the responses, the written responses and the conversation that we had, my notes, and come up with some themes for the instructor. So it kind of narrows it down a bit. Here are the highlights, so they're not just overwhelmed with feedback, because we know it can be very overwhelming to get
for sure.
too much feedback, right? But it's nice because you get the context from the facilitator. It's one of the most impactful things that we can do to change things in the classroom, because it's from the horse's mouth and it's not after it's too late to do anything about it. We usually try to do it around midterm. But you could do it sooner. And I've done everything from, just kind of a standard survey to, what can I start doing, stop doing, continue doing, things like that can be really valuable for the instructor. Not everyone is going to be able to change all of the things. Like if your students say, we don't want any more tests, and you have mandatory tests, then you're not going to be able to change that.
Right.
But at least you can say, hey guys, I heard this, guys and girls, sorry, people, folks. I read this from the feedback that you gave to the facilitator. I really appreciate all of your comments. I'm going to just, pick out a couple of things that I want to address today. The assessment thing, thanks for your feedback on that. I know nobody likes tests, but is there something we can do to, help ease your anxiety around the test? What is it that makes you give me that feedback that you don't want tests? Why do you hate them so much? Is there anything that I can do to support you in that? So it can open up a dialogue at the very least, even if you can't make the changes. And then, maybe there's a low hanging fruit there. Maybe they're saying, I want you to treat me like an adult and, let me take my phone call and go outside without embarrassing me in front of everyone or whatever it is. And you say, okay, well, maybe we'll have like, a pass and you get one pass for, I don't know, the day or something. I don't know. If you're not comfortable with just people walking in and out of your classroom, for example. But yeah, it's just, it helps the students feel seen and heard and their problems get addressed. And then what usually you'll find is then the student evaluations at the end of the semester are more meaningful. They might even be more favorable to you because you've listened to them and addressed the challenges that they would have otherwise saved up maybe until the end.
Mm-hmm. Has there been an opportunity to look at the student outcomes in regards to grades and marks as to
that would be a great study. I think Doug Major from VCC did his PhD on small group instructional feedback. There might be some data in there that looks at the trajectory. I'm not sure. Yeah. And I haven't done that. That would be a major undertaking with privacy and all those kinds of things, but it would be really interesting to track.
Yeah, because on one hand, a lot of programs get evaluated by that, right? And sometimes faculty can be evaluated by student outcomes. Mm. And on the other hand, I know that there is a sentiment of, well, you can't let everybody pass. And my immediate question to that is, why not? Mm. Right? Like why? Well, why do we have to have people fail? Well, yeah. You have to show rigor in the program. Okay, but what if the class is really just, what if they're good? What if, and then the answer to that I've heard is, well, not everybody's that good. And like,
interesting.
Okay. So we're all, yeah. Like, how do you talk your way through that? Right. It's like, well, I have to make sure that certain number of people fail, because if I have 2 or 3 classes back to back where everybody gets through, then what does that mean? Right. And sometimes my answer is, well, maybe you're teaching well and they're learning well.
Yeah.
Right. I don't know.
How about that?
What do you find is the top theme coming back from students when you're in these kinds of conversations? Like, is it about style and delivery, or is it really more about the autonomy issue? Like you just said, treat me like an adult. If I'm going to take a phone call, I'm going to take it.
I think it's generally more about the instruction and the approach to teaching. It's also sometimes about grading, how they're being graded and marked. They'd like to have another chance to complete the assessment or to improve a mark, things like that. But mostly I think it's about the instruction and how the teacher is with them. Yeah, relationship wise, rules, how they speak to them, or if they give them time to speak or a chance to speak and be heard. And I think the real value of that is it opens up that conversation, because that might be a teacher who first came to me and said, oh, it's like pulling teeth. I can't get them to say anything. And then the students are like, they never let me talk, or they don't ask me my opinion. So then it's like, okay, so where's the breakdown in this? And it could be a very simple fix. Interesting.
All right. We're coming up to the end. Jen, thank you so much for being here. Got a couple more questions for you. Outside of the book, Reach Everyone, Teach Everyone, what else are you reading right now that's making you think and go,
Oh, good question. It's called Curbing Traffic by the Bruntlets. It's not an education book, but it's about cycling infrastructure and safe streets. It's a couple from Vancouver who moved their family to the Netherlands after writing this other book called Building the Cycling City. And it's amazing. It's amazing. I just love it so much. We really need to get on the go here with our safe streets. So
are you the kind of cyclist that would have a sticker on your frame saying one less car?
I don't, but I just ordered the hat. I got a baseball hat from the podcast, The War on Cars.
Okay.
Check it out. Really good.
Is that what you're listening to lately?
Yeah.
So podcast War on Cars?
Yeah.
Is this like a couple of people getting together and talking about their experiences of riding in traffic?
They have examples, and it's really good. Actually, it's a really well-established podcast. And so it'll give you lots of ideas, and it just challenges our perception of how things should be. You know, car culture has created these assumptions about who the streets are for and where we're allowed to walk or ride our bikes or who gets priority. And that affects how we drive, how we interact.
It sure does.
And I'm a driver. I do drive. I have a vehicle. And so, you know, I'm not saying that we should ban cars, but I do think it's important for us to think about that, you know, those extremes, so that we can think about what's possible.
Yeah, that's quite a big bone of contention here on the West Coast, especially in Vancouver area, where there's tons of people on bikes.
Yeah.
And it seems like we're losing lanes every month somewhere on a bridge or in a thoroughfare. And even the way I just say it, we're losing lanes, right?
Well, and you're losing people because people are dying, right? And you know, not to get heavy here, but people are losing their lives for very preventable, reasons that really we should not accept. And that's, the Netherlands wasn't always the Netherlands, as people like to say. The Netherlands was heading in the direction of North America in terms of car infrastructure. And they had a number of deaths. I think it was in the 60s. And everybody went out to the streets and protested and said, we don't want our kids dying in the streets. And it turned it around. And that was the power of people to make that change. And look at it now.
Amazing.
It's a cycling paradise. Yeah.
And you say in the 1960s, so it wasn't like 100 years ago when cars were just starting to come out and people were like, no, we don't want technology, we don't need cars. It was really like 50, 60 years ago.
Yeah.
Wow. That's amazing. In the Netherlands too, you don't really anticipate people in the Netherlands protesting out in the streets, right?
Yeah. Well, you know, and why aren't we? You know, people's kids are dying because they're trying to get to school on a bicycle or trying to cross a crosswalk, and some person like speeds through, and you know, that's it. So we're getting quite heavy here at the end, but it's something I'm quite passionate about, and I think it's really important. Yeah,
no kidding. Are you listening to any other podcasts besides War on Cars?
We just traveled on the weekend and we listened to The Dropout, which is about Elizabeth Holmes and the Theranos scandal. That's quite interesting, bit salacious. You know, sometimes we like a little bit of gossipy. Yeah.
Nice. Good deal. All right. Well, last question, Jen. What impact do you want to have on the system that you're in this next 6 months?
6 months. Good question. You always get me with these questions at the end. I think a realistic goal for me would be if more and more people at the college, like if all of our faculty could at least know what universal design for learning is in the next 6 months. And if they all know who I am so that they know where they can come for conversations about teaching and learning, that would be amazing. I would love that. Oh,
that'd be great. So if there's anybody in the Newfoundland Labrador area that needs UDL coaching and learning, you need to go talk to Jenn Wicks, and whether it's virtual or over a coffee somewhere, Maybe it's on a bike, riding on the road.
There you go.
That would even be better. But thanks so much, Jenn, for being on the show today. It's always a pleasure to sit down and chat with you. I always anticipate where our conversation is going to go, because it almost seems eclectic from a couple steps back, but it does come together in this beautiful tapestry of everything that we talk about, even cycling all the way through to UDL and coaching and teaching and learning. And it's a very holistic conversation that we have. And I always walk away with a lot more to think about than I did when we start. So thank you so much.
Me too. Thank you, Tim. And thanks for your questions. You always ask great questions. And anytime that you want to have another conversation like this, I'm here, because I do too enjoy it and learn a lot. So thanks.
You. You're welcome.